He ordered a bourbon and paid for it. Then he handed the flight attendant a note, and she put it in her pocket without reading it. Men passed her notes all the time. He leaned over and told her she'd better read that one. It said he had a bomb. The day before Thanksgiving 1971, Portland, Oregon. A man pays $20 cash at the Northwest Orient counter for a one-way seat to Seattle. The name on the ticket is Dan Cooper. Nobody looks twice, and in 1971 there's no reason to. You walk onto an aeroplane without being searched. No metal detector, no X-ray. People carried whatever they liked into the cabin, and there were 305 hijackings worldwide between 1968 and 1972. For the 25 years before that, the figure never once passed 10 a year. So, a quiet man in his 40s, business suit, black tie, attaché case, is the least interesting thing at that airport. He takes the last row. He orders a bourbon. He pays for it. Shortly after 3 in the afternoon, he hands flight attendant Florence Schaffner an envelope. She doesn't read it. She's used to it. Passengers pass flight attendant's notes, and she puts this one in her pocket. He leans over and tells her she had better look at it. It says he has a bomb, and that he wants her to sit beside him. She asks him if he's kidding. He opens the attaché case just enough, and she sees what look like red sticks, a battery, and wire. Understand what is and isn't known here. Nobody ever tested that case. Nobody ever saw what was inside it again. To this day, it has never been established whether there was a bomb in that briefcase at all. His demands go to the cockpit. $200,000 in $20 bills. 4 parachutes. 2 back, 2 front. A fuel truck. And meals for the crew. The plane circles Seattle in a thunderstorm for 3 hours. The passengers are told there's a mechanical problem, and the pilot has to burn off fuel. Almost none of them ever know they are being hijacked. On the ground, a detective collects a canvas bag from the Seattle First National Bank. 10,000 $20 bills, about 19 pounds. And here is the detail that matters later. The bank photographs every serial number onto microfilm first. That was routine. Flight attendant Tina Mucklow carries the bag aboard. Only then does Cooper let all 36 passengers off, every one of them unharmed. Then he offers Mucklow a bundle of the money. She turns it down. On their way out, he tries to tip the other 2 flight attendants with the change from his drink. They turn that down too. Now his instructions get specific in a way that has bothered people for 50 years. Fly toward Mexico City. Landing gear down. Flaps at 15 degrees. Stay under 10,000 feet. Leave the cabin unpressurized. That is not a random list. That is the exact configuration that makes a 727 slow enough and low enough to jump out of the back of. And he wants the rear air stair lowered in flight, when the airline isn't sure that's even possible. He seems more certain about the aeroplane than the people flying it. So, a pilot? A paratrooper? Someone from the aircraft industry? Careful, because the same man takes the ex-military parachute instead of the better one, misses a reserve that's been sewn shut and can never open, and jumps into freezing sleet in a business suit and dress shoes. No helmet, no boots. Both of those things are true. That is the whole problem with Cooper. They take off with all 4 crew locked in the cockpit. Nobody sees him again. At 7:42, a light comes on. The aft stairs are down. At 8:05, they call back on the intercom to ask if he needs help. One word: no. Outside, it's about 7 below, in sleet and hail at roughly 200 miles an hour. Then the crew feels the tail pitch. A pressure change recorded at 8:13. They call back again. This time they address him as Sir. the way he'd been calling them Miss all night. Nothing. The plane lands at Reno at 11:02, with the stairs still hanging open, throwing sparks down the runway. The cabin is empty. The last person who knowingly saw Dan Cooper was Tina Mucklow, glancing back as he tied the money around his waist. What follows is the largest manhunt of its kind, and it finds nothing. No body, no parachute, no money. Not that winter, not that spring, not in the years after. In 1978, a hunter finds a plastic placard from the aft stairway in the flight path. That is the closest anyone gets. He does leave things behind: a black clip-on tie from J.C. Penney, $1.50, with a mother-of-pearl clip, which the FBI says later gave them a DNA sample. Raleigh cigarette butts, subsequently lost. 2 hairs, 2 parachutes, 1 cut apart for cord. The Bureau calls the case Norjack. Within 5 years, it considers more than 800 suspects and eliminates all but about 2 dozen. Not one of them sticks. February 1980. 8 years later. Tina Bar on the Columbia River, about 9 miles from Vancouver, Washington. An 8-year-old named Brian Ingram is smoothing sand flat so his family can build a campfire, and his arm catches something under the surface. 3 bundles of $20 bills, rotting, rubber-banded, edges eaten away. 2 packets of 100, 1 of 90. $5,800. The FBI checks the serial numbers against that microfilm, and they match. Same bills. Still in the same order the bank handed them over in 9 years earlier. An agent calls it the first clue they've had since the night of the hijacking. And it is still, arguably, the last one. Here's the thing about that money. It doesn't solve anything. It makes it worse. Nobody can explain how it got there. Washed downstream? Dredged up? Buried? A 2020 analysis of diatoms, microscopic algae in the sediment, suggests the money entered the water months after the hijacking, not that November. Every explanation contradicts a different piece of the evidence, and the rest of it, about $190,000, has never surfaced. Not one bill in more than 50 years, with the serial numbers public and rewards offered. Which cuts both ways. A man who died in a forest doesn't spend the money, but neither, apparently, does a man who lived. And then there's the part almost nobody tells. Cooper made it look easy, so people tried it. Within about 8 months, at least 13 men in the United States hijacked aircraft demanding money and parachutes. $50,000, $500,000. One man asked for $1 million. Every single one was caught, arrested, shot, or committed. Not one got away. One of them, Richard McCoy, was arrested for a nearly identical jump less than 5 months after Cooper's flight. And the FBI says he's still a favorite suspect for many people. The FBI also ruled him out. He didn't match the flight attendant's descriptions, among other reasons. The copycats are why you take your shoes off at an airport, because that is his real legacy. And it isn't a folk song. Every Boeing 727 got a small, spring-loaded metal wedge bolted under the tail. A latch that makes it physically impossible to lower the rear stairs in flight. It is called the Cooper vein. It is named after a man nobody can name. And in January 1973, the FAA required every passenger and every carry-on bag in the United States to be screened. The golden age of hijacking ended. 305 in 5 years became 20 to 40. On July the 8th, 2016, after 45 years, the FBI stopped looking. It called Norjack one of the longest and most exhaustive investigations in its history. 66 volumes of case file went into storage. It is not solved. The Bureau still says that if anyone finds the parachutes or the money, to call them. It remains the only unsolved case of air piracy in commercial aviation history. And the name it's filed under isn't even his. His ticket said Dan Cooper. A rushed news report in the first hours turned it into DB. The FBI corrected it the next day, and the correction never caught up. 54 years of searching under a typo. If you want the parts of this that didn't fit, the tip he tried to leave, the chute that was sewn shut, they're on the channel.